The chamber of Nexus Prime was cold and ancient. It had stood for 10,000 years, witness to the rise and fall of empires, to wars that had shaken entire sectors of space. The walls gleamed with a pale blue light that came from the very structure itself. Representatives from the oldest species in the galaxy sat around a massive table that curved in the shape of a circle. No one sat at the head. This was how the council worked. All were equal. All were ancient. All believed they knew better. Captain Lisa Warner stood at the entrance and waited. She was human, which meant she was young by their standards. 70 years in space. That was nothing. That was a blink. The council members turned to look at her, and she felt the weight of their eyes. Some showed curiosity. Some showed nothing at all. The beings of pure energy trapped in metal bodies did not have eyes, but she felt their attention anyway. Lisa moved into the chamber. Her military uniform was crisp and clean. She had chosen it carefully. These beings respected order and discipline. She would show them both. The counselor spoke first. His voice was like grinding stones, low and heavy. He had lived for 3,000 years. His species had conquered the stars when humans still fought with rocks and fire. Captain Warner said, "You request this emergency session. The council does not enjoy emergency sessions. They interrupt our work. They disturb the balance of careful thought." Lisa nodded. She had expected this. The council did not move quickly. The council did not see the need for speed. "The collective grows stronger," Lisa said. Her voice was steady. "In the last month they have taken 7 colonies. The system fell. The Pix was overrun. Millions are dead. Millions more are enslaved." The council members exchanged looks. Some of them seemed bored. "They have always been aggressive," said Counselor Ra. She was ancient even by council standards. Her species had discovered space travel when Earth's continents were still shifting. "They test boundaries. They always have. In time, they will accept their place. We have seen this cycle many times before." "Not like this," Lisa said. She pulled up data on the screen. Charts appeared, showing the speed of expansion. "Look at the rate of conquest. They are moving faster than any species in recorded history. If we do not act now, if we do not mobilize our forces and respond with speed and strength, they will control an entire sector within 6 months." The being called made a sound like wind through a canyon. It was how his kind laughed. "You suggest military action," said. It was not a question. "You suggest that we use force. We are the council. We do not use force. We use diplomacy. We use patience. We use the weight of our authority and our civilization to guide younger species toward reason." Lisa felt anger building in her chest. She forced it down. These beings could not understand. They had lived too long in comfort. They had forgotten what it meant to fight, to survive, to lose something precious. "They do not care about our authority," Lisa said. "They do not respond to diplomacy. They respond to strength. They see us sitting here talking and they see weakness. They see an opportunity." Counselor S., who represented a species of collective minds, spoke in a voice that sounded like many people talking at once. "The human brings fear to our chamber," S said. "Fear clouds judgment. The humans are new to the stars. They still think like warriors. They still believe that problems can be solved with weapons and speed. This is why we are concerned about humanity joining the council. You lack the patience for true civilization." Lisa's hands clenched into fists. She forced them to relax. These beings had no idea what they were talking about. "My people come from a world called Earth," Lisa said. "It is a harsh place. Predators hunt. Storms destroy. Resources are limited. We learn to fight, to survive, to adapt quickly or die. This is not a weakness. This is a strength. And it is a strength we need now." Stood, his massive form rose above the table. He was 12 feet tall and his skin looked like ancient stone. "We will form a committee," he said. "The Committee for Affairs will study the situation. We will examine their demands. Perhaps there are economic solutions. Perhaps we can offer them wealth in exchange for peace. War should be the last resort, and we have exhausted none of our other options." "There are no other options," Lisa said. Her voice was sharp now. "They do not want peace. They want conquest. Every day we sit here talking, more people die." "And that is regrettable," Counselor Ra said. Her voice was sad, but it was a sadness that came from great distance, not from understanding. "But hasty action often creates greater tragedies. We have learned this through long experience. Let us move carefully. Let us move with thought and wisdom. The Council has protected this galaxy for 10,000 years by refusing to be drawn into reckless conflict." Lisa looked around the chamber. She saw no movement. She saw no sense of urgency. She saw only ancient beings sitting in comfortable chairs, convinced of their own superiority, convinced that time was on their side. She was wrong about that last part. "How long?" Lisa asked. "How long before your committee reaches a conclusion?" "Perhaps 3 months," said. "Perhaps longer. Important decisions cannot be rushed." Lisa thought about She thought about their cities burning. She thought about the Pix children who would never grow up. She thought about her own daughter back on Earth, the child she had left behind when she joined the Council. "I see," Lisa said. She turned toward the chamber's exit. Captain Warner called after her. "Where do you go?" "To send a message," Lisa said. She did not turn around. "To people who still understand what it means to fight." The Council members watched her leave. None of them understood the significance of what was about to happen. None of them realized that in that moment, they had just set in motion events that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. None of them knew that they had just underestimated a species that had learned its greatest strength not from technology or time, but from the desperate need to survive. Lisa Warner walked through the halls of Nexus Prime and composed a secure message to Earth. It was a simple message. It contained coordinates and one word: attack. In the chamber behind her, the Council continued to speak of committees and careful thought. They did not understand that some threats do not wait for committees. Some threats must be met with speed and strength. The humans would teach them this lesson. It would be a hard lesson, but it would be one they never forgot. The cosmos was about to change. The Council did not see it coming. Admiral Hayes sat in the command center of Earth's military headquarters when the message came through. The building was buried deep underground, protected by layers of reinforced concrete and steel. The walls were covered in screens showing satellite data, fleet positions, and threat assessments. Hayes had been the head of Earth's military for 12 years. He had spent those years watching his species being treated like children by the galactic community. Now, he read Lisa Warner's message and felt something shift inside him. One word: attack. He read it again to make sure he understood. Then he picked up the communication device on his desk and made one call. The message was simple: emergency session now. Within 20 minutes, the leaders of Earth's greatest nations sat in the same room. The President of the Americas was there. The Chairman of the Asian Union was there. The Director of the European Alliance was there. Military commanders, scientists, and government officials filled the chamber. They all waited for Hayes to speak. "Captain Warner has sent authorization," Hayes said. "The Council will not act. We are on our own. The collective continues to expand. In 6 months, they will control more of the galaxy than we can fight. In 1 year, we will have no allies left to fight beside. We need to move now." The President of the Americas, a woman named Stone, stood up. She was sharp and decisive, exactly what Earth needed in this moment. "How long do we have to mobilize?" she asked. "Days," Hayes said. "Not weeks. Days. The move faster than we expected. We need to have forces in position within a week, or we lose the first colonies that the Council won't help us defend." Stone turned to her advisors. She did not ask for a vote. She did not ask for committee review. She made a decision. "Tell the military to mobilize everything," she said. "Full deployment, all ships ready, all soldiers mobilized, we fight." What happened next was the birth of something new in human military history. The entire species moved as one. Factories that had been making civilian goods switched to weapons production. Shipyards worked around the clock, building weapons and defenses that had existed only on computer screens days before. Soldiers, sailors, and pilots reported to bases. Families said goodbye at train stations and spaceports. Mothers held their children close, not knowing if they would see them again. Young pilot Corinne Price sat in her apartment on the morning of the mobilization. She was 37 years old and she had a teenage daughter named Maya. The news had announced it that morning. Military deployment. All personnel report to their units. Corinne had known it was coming. Everyone with any sense had known. But knowing something and living it were different things. She packed a bag with clean uniforms and a picture of Maya. She left a note on the kitchen table explaining everything. She explained that she was fighting so her daughter could have a future. She explained that sometimes people had to do hard things to protect the ones they loved. Corinne drove to the spaceport and checked in. Around her, thousands of other soldiers did the same thing. The spaceport was a controlled chaos of movement and purpose. Ships were being loaded with soldiers, weapons, and supplies. The air smelled like fuel and machine oil and determination. Technician David Cooper was working in the weapons development facility. He had not slept in 36 hours. Neither had his team. They were racing to modify human weapons technology to work against shields. They were more advanced, that was true. But humans had something they did not expect. Humans were creative. When one idea did not work, they tried 5 more. When a problem seemed impossible, they worked until it became possible. David found a solution using technology that was 50 years old combined with technology that had been invented last week. It was clumsy and inefficient compared to what they could do, but it would work. That was all that mattered. General John stood in the command center of the human military fleet. Around him, officers worked on strategies and battle plans. Was 60 years old and had spent his entire adult life studying military history. He knew that humans had always been warriors. From the first moment humans had learned to make tools, they had used those tools for defense and offense. The galaxy did not understand this. The Council certainly did not understand this, but understood. Humanity's greatest strength was not its technology or its intelligence. It was the willingness to fight when the time came. Load the ships, ordered. Double the ammunition supplies. Give the soldiers double rations of food. Make sure every person on those ships knows why we are fighting. We are not fighting for territory. We are not fighting for glory. We are fighting to save people. That makes us stronger than any weapon that can build. The massive space elevator began moving. Ships rose from Earth's surface, carrying humanity's best and warriors into the black. The Earth Defense Network was left behind with a minimal crew. Everyone else was heading out into space. The fleet that left Earth was not the largest fleet in the galaxy. They had bigger ships. The Council had more weapons, but the humans had something different. They had speed. They had purpose. They had the knowledge that they were not fighting for themselves, but for the innocent people who were suffering under rule. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the flagship and watched Earth grow smaller. His world, his home, was disappearing behind him. Around him, humans looked out into the darkness of space with grim determination. "Set course for the controlled territories," he said. His voice was steady. "Full acceleration, we have innocents to save." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Stars streaked past the windows. The humans were coming. The collective did not know it yet, but they were about to learn a lesson that would change the entire galaxy. They were about to discover what happened when you underestimated a species that had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The cosmos did not know it yet, but it was about to shake. The first battle took place at the outer colonies of the sector. The humans arrived with no warning, their ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel and immediately engaging the defense fleet. The commanders were confused at first. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to be primitive. But the humans did not act primitive. They acted like warriors who had nothing to lose. The initial exchange of fire showed the truth of the situation. Weapons were more powerful, shields were stronger, ships were larger and more advanced. In a direct fight between one warship and one human warship, they would win every time. But this was not a direct fight. This was a human fight. Captain Lisa Warner commanded the human strike force that attacked the colony world of Seven. The planet had been conquered 3 weeks earlier. Thousands of troops occupied the planet's major cities. The population had been rounded up and was being prepared for transportation to labor camps. Warner's ships dropped into orbit and began attacking the landing sites where reinforcements were gathering. "Concentrate fire on the eastern landing zone," Warner ordered. Her voice was calm and clear. "Ignore the northern defense towers. They are decoys. Hit their supply lines. Make them bleed fuel and ammunition." The human pilots attacked with precise coordination. They did not try to match the superior weapons. Instead, they attacked the logistics. They destroyed fuel depots. They targeted ammunition stores. They struck at the weaknesses that every military force possessed, no matter how advanced. The commanders ordered their ships to pursue the humans into the upper atmosphere. This was a mistake. Humans had evolved on a world with thick atmosphere and complicated weather. Human pilots could fly in ways that seemed impossible to beings that had always had open space. The ships, designed for space combat, became clumsy in the thick air. Human pilots, evolved from a world that demanded survival skills, danced through the atmosphere like birds. 3 hours into the battle, they had lost half their ground forces. The human casualties were only a quarter of that. The commanders were beginning to panic. This was not supposed to be possible. On the ground, General John led a team of soldiers toward the city center where the enslaved population was being held. They had superior weapons, but they had never fought against humans before. They did not understand human tactics, had studied human military history from ancient Earth. He understood that humans did not always win through superior strength. Humans won through speed, adaptation, and the willingness to accept losses that other species found unacceptable. Soldiers moved through the city like water. When they encountered a defensive position, they did not attack it directly. They moved around it. When they found a strong position, they attacked from 3 directions at once. The soldiers, designed for large-scale battles against other advanced species, found themselves confused by the human tactics. A young soldier named Owen Cross moved with his unit toward the detention center. They had posted guards there, but Cross's team had already disabled the alarm system through the city's computer network. Human soldiers were not just fighters. They were adaptable warriors who could think on their feet and solve problems in real time. When the guards saw the humans coming, they tried to retreat into the building, but the humans had already cut off their escape routes. The guards had nowhere to go. Some tried to fight. Some tried to surrender. Either way, they were stopped. The enslaved population was freed. Thousands of beings emerged from the detention center, confused and terrified and hopeful. Personally led them to the human ships. He stood in the landing zone, an older man with gray hair and the bearing of a warrior, and made sure every single person made it to safety. "No one gets left behind," he told his soldiers. "No one, that is the human way." They tried to respond with reinforcements, but the humans had already destroyed most of their supply lines. The ships that tried to land ran out of fuel before they reached the planet. One by one, they crashed into the ocean. The battle was over in less than 12 hours. The news spread through the galaxy like fire. Humans had defeated not just defeated them, destroyed them, taken a military force and crushed it. The council received reports and became very quiet. The ancient beings began studying human history with new intensity. What they found confused them. Humans had been killing each other with increasingly sophisticated weapons for thousands of years. Humans had developed military tactics over centuries. Humans understood war in a way that species who had achieved peace thousands of years ago had forgotten. The realizing they had seriously underestimated their new enemy doubled their efforts elsewhere. They attacked 3 other systems simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm the human response. But the humans had already anticipated this. The human fleet split into 3 groups. Each group was led by a commander who understood human tactics. Each group moved with speed and precision. The battle for Pix-9 took only 8 hours. The humans disabled the landing ships before they could unload ground forces. The battle for the mining colonies took 6 hours. The humans attacked the command ship directly, knowing they would have to defend their leaders. The battle for Station Delta took 4 hours. The humans used a tactic from ancient Earth warfare, creating a false retreat that drew the forces into a trap. In each case, the humans won. In each case, they lost more ships and soldiers. In each case, the people being enslaved were freed. Technician David Cooper watched the battle reports come in and felt pride move through him. His modified weapons had worked. The human engineers and soldiers had taken old ideas and new science and created something powerful. The technology was more advanced, but human ingenuity was more adaptable. Admiral Hayes sat in the command center and understood what was happening. They were beginning to panic. When an enemy started to panic, they made mistakes. When an enemy made mistakes, warriors who were prepared could exploit those mistakes and win. "Maintain pursuit," Hayes ordered. "They are falling back. Push them harder. Do not give them time to reorganize. Do not give them time to plan. We keep moving forward until they have no more territory to retreat to." The human fleet moved deeper into space. Behind them, liberated populations cheered. In front of them, they were learning a lesson that would change the galaxy forever. They were learning that technology and size and age did not guarantee victory. Courage and adaptability and the will to fight for something greater than yourself, those were the things that won battles. The cosmos was beginning to quake. The news spread across the galaxy like a wave of electricity. Humans were winning, more than winning. Humans were liberating entire systems from control. They were free. The Pix were free. The colonies were free. Species that had resigned themselves to slow death under rules suddenly saw hope. The collective called an emergency session. They had watched the humans at work, destroying forces with techniques the ancient species had forgotten even existed. When the council members gathered, it was not to discuss committees or careful diplomacy. It was to discuss how to support the humans. Counselor stood before the chamber and admitted something he had never admitted before. He was wrong. The humans had understood something the ancient species had forgotten. Speed and violence, when applied with purpose and intelligence, were not the tools of the weak. They were sometimes the only tools that worked against those who refused to listen to reason. A new movement began. Young species that had been conquered or threatened by the began requesting permission to join the human forces. The sent fighters. The Pix sent a fleet. They provided weapons and technology that the humans could adapt to their purposes. Even some of the younger council members broke rank and provided intelligence about military positions and supply lines. Captain Corinne Price flew her fighter into the thick of battle after battle. She had lost 2 wingmen in the first week. She had seen friends die. She had killed other beings with her weapons. But every time she looked at the sensor data and saw enslaved populations being freed, she understood why she was fighting. She thought about her daughter Maya back on Earth every single day. She fought so her daughter would inherit a galaxy where species were free. Although the military commanders began to panic, their intelligence reports told them the truth. They were losing. They had superior technology, but the humans had something better. The humans had will. The humans did not accept that defeat was possible. Every time they set a defensive position, the humans found a way around it. Every time they launched a counteroffensive, the humans adapted their tactics and crushed it. The Emperor made a desperate decision. He ordered an all-out assault against the human fleet, every available ship, every available soldier. One massive strike that would overwhelm the humans through sheer numbers. The Emperor believed that humans were still primitive. The Emperor believed that superior numbers would overcome superior tactics. He was wrong. The humans were waiting for the attack. Admiral Hayes had predicted it. They were becoming desperate, and desperate enemies made predictable moves. The human fleet split into a formation that had been used by ancient Earth navies thousands of years earlier. The human pilots had studied history. They knew what had worked before. The fleet came screaming through space, weapons firing, shields at maximum. It was an impressive display of military power. It was also doomed. The humans let them come forward. The human ships pulled back, seeming to retreat. They followed, convinced they were finally winning. Then the human ships turned. The prepositioned human forces came out of hiding. They found themselves surrounded. The battle lasted 18 hours. By the end, the fleet was broken. 2/3 of the military power had been destroyed. The remaining ships were scattered and running. The Emperor, realizing his position was collapsing, tried to negotiate. He sent an envoy to the human command ship under a white flag. General received the envoy in his command center. The alien being was tall and thin, with hard eyes that showed desperation. "We have suffered a military defeat," the envoy said. It was hard for him to say the words. They had never been defeated. "We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender." Listen to the terms. They wanted to keep some of their territory. They wanted to keep some of their military force. They wanted guarantees that they would not be enslaved or destroyed. Considered this, then he spoke. "You will disarm completely," he said. "You will free every enslaved being. You will face trials for your crimes against other species. This is not negotiable. You had the chance to make peace. You chose conquest. Now you will face the consequences of that choice." The envoy left knowing there would be no compromise. The collective was finished. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. The humans had won, not through luck, not through superior numbers, through courage, adaptability, and the will to fight for something greater than themselves. The Council sent their own envoy to meet with Admiral Hayes. It was Counselor himself, the ancient being who had dismissed Lisa Warner's warnings. He came to understand what the humans had done. Hayes stood on the deck of his flagship and looked at the ancient being, was humbled in a way that Hayes suspected had never happened to him before. "We were wrong," said. "We believed that ancient wisdom and advanced technology were enough. We believed that speed and violence were primitive. We were wrong. You have shown us something we had forgotten. You have shown us that true strength comes from being willing to fight for others. You have shown us that courage cannot be calculated. It can only be demonstrated." Hayes nodded slowly. He was not arrogant about victory. He understood the cost. He had lost good soldiers. He had lost friends. But they had won because they fought for the right reasons. "We did not do this for glory," Hayes said. "We did this because enslaved beings needed to be freed. That is all. That is reason enough." The Council began reorganizing itself. They understood now that they needed to change. They needed to move faster. They needed to be willing to use force when necessary. Most importantly, they needed to listen to younger species. They needed to respect courage even when it came from beings they had thought primitive. Across the galaxy, species began rebuilding. They rebuilt their cities. The Picts cared for their wounded. They restored their mining operations. All of them looked at the humans with new respect. All of them understood that the galaxy had changed. In the human fleet, soldiers and pilots celebrated. They had done the impossible. They had taken a species that the galaxy considered primitive and used that species to save millions of lives. Corinne Price received a communication. It was her daughter Maya. The girl was crying, but they were tears of joy and relief. "You are coming home?" Maya asked. "Yes," Corinne said. "We are coming home. The war is won. It is time to go home." The humans had changed the galaxy. They had shown that speed and courage and the will to do what was right were more powerful than age and technology and casual superiority. The cosmos had learned to respect humanity. The cosmos had learned to quake when humans chose to fight for the innocent. The final battle took place at the... It was a massive fortress of a planet, with cities built into mountains and defensive stations covering every approach. They had invested everything they had into making this planet impregnable. They had failed to realize that no fortress is perfect when the enemy is willing to die to breach it. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship as the human fleet approached the... Around him were ships from the Pix, and the... They all came because the humans had shown them that freedom was worth fighting for. They all came because the humans had inspired them to believe that victory was possible. They opened fire as the fleet approached. It was a storm of weapons, a wall of energy and heat and destruction. The human ships did not stop. They did not slow down. They pressed forward, absorbing the fire, adapting their shields, returning fire with precision and fury. In his flagship, Hayes gave the order to begin the ground assault. Thousands of soldiers, including General John, loaded into drop pods and prepared to descend to the planet's surface, stood in the assembly chamber and looked at his troops. These were humans. These were beings who had never been to another world until 10 years ago. Now they were about to fight on a hostile alien world to save people they would never meet. "Remember why we are here," said. His voice was steady and strong. "We are not here for revenge. We are not here for conquest. We are here to end slavery. We are here to give freedom to beings who deserve it. When you land, when you face soldiers, remember that those soldiers are following orders from leaders who chose conquest over peace. You are the ones choosing freedom. That makes you stronger. That makes you right. That makes you unbeatable." The drop pods fell like meteors through the atmosphere. Below, they waited with weapons ready. They had never been invaded. They had never been forced to defend their own world. They did not know how to do it. Soldiers landed and immediately began moving. They did not wait for organization. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They adapted to what they found and moved forward. They had built their cities with long, wide streets designed for their military vehicles to move through easily. Soldiers used those same streets but moved through the buildings and alleys, creating a three-dimensional battlefield that they did not understand. Young soldier Owen Cross led a unit toward the command center. His team had trained for this. They had studied combat tactics from Earth's history. They understood that the best military force was one that adapted and moved faster than the enemy could predict. Cross's unit moved like a living organism, each person knowing what the others would do without needing to communicate. They breached the command center and found the Emperor himself waiting. The Emperor was old and tall and surrounded by guards. He had never expected to see humans stand before him on his own world. "This is impossible," the Emperor said. His voice was ancient and cold. "My military is superior. My world is a fortress. You should not be here." Cross stepped forward. He was young, barely 25 years old, from a species that had been spacefaring for less than a century. He stood before the most powerful being that had ever produced and showed no fear. "You are here because you chose conquest," Cross said. His voice was simple and direct. "You could have chosen peace. You could have chosen to trade fairly with other species. You chose slavery and death. Now you will face the consequences." The guards tried to fight, but humans had studied combat for thousands of years. Humans had evolved on a world where survival meant fighting. They defeated the guards and captured the Emperor without significant loss. The battle lasted 3 days. By the end, they had surrendered completely. The Empire was finished. The species would survive, but they would never again be a threat to the galaxy. Admiral Hayes landed on and walked through the conquered city. Around him were humans and soldiers from freed species, standing together as equals. They had fought together. They had bled together. They had won together. The prisoners were taken into custody. They would face trials. They would answer for their crimes. But they would not be enslaved and they would not be destroyed. That was the human way. Humans had seen slavery and rejected it. Humans had learned from their own history that vengeance only created more suffering. The council gathered again, but this time it was different. The chamber was no longer cold and distant. It was alive with new energy. The ancient beings understood that they had been wrong. They had believed that advanced technology and ancient wisdom were enough. They had not understood that some things could not be calculated. Courage could not be calculated. Sacrifice could not be calculated. The will to do what was right, even when it cost everything, that could not be calculated. Captain Lisa Warner stood in the chamber, and now the council listened. Not with the patience of beings who believed they knew better. They listened with the respect that comes from understanding that they had been taught a lesson by beings they had thought primitive. The humans came to the stars only 70 years ago, Warner said. Her voice was steady. We came as explorers and traders. We asked for a place at the council table. You gave us one because you believed we had to learn how the galaxy worked. What we learned is that the galaxy has forgotten something important. The galaxy has forgotten that some things are worth fighting for. The galaxy has forgotten that freedom is not just a word. It is something you have to be willing to die for. The council members listened. They understood now what the humans had tried to teach them. They understood why the cosmos quaked when humans chose to fight. The news spread across the galaxy. Humans had defeated Humans had liberated millions of enslaved beings. Humans had changed the power structure of the entire galactic civilization, and the humans had done all of this not for themselves, but for others. They had fought so that species they did not know could be free. Admiral Hayes held a ceremony to honor the fallen. Thousands of humans and freed aliens stood together, holding candles in the darkness, stood before them and spoke. They died so others could live, said. They died so freedom could exist in this galaxy. That is why humanity is strong. That is why the cosmos quakes when we choose to fight. We fight for freedom. We fight for the innocent. We fight because some things are worth dying for. That is the human way. That is what makes us unbeatable. On Earth, Maya watched the ceremony broadcast through the communication network. She saw her mother standing among the other pilots, alive and whole and victorious. She cried, but they were tears of pride and relief and love. The cosmos had learned something new. It had learned that a young species, a species the galaxy had thought primitive, could teach the ancient and powerful beings something they had forgotten. The cosmos had learned that courage and sacrifice and the will to fight for what was right were the most powerful forces in the universe. Humans had shown the galaxy why it trembles, not from fear of human weapons, not from fear of human numbers, from respect, from the understanding that there exists in this universe a species that is willing to give everything for the freedom of others. A species that understands that true strength comes not from technology or age or power, but from moral courage. The stars themselves bore witness, the cosmos quaked, and it would never forget.